Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the stars through the main screen. His ship had been exploring space for 3 months now, looking for new worlds that humans could call home. The year was 2387, and humanity had spread across 12 star systems, building colonies and making new lives among the stars. Jake had always loved space travel. He grew up on Earth dreaming of flying between the stars and discovering what lay beyond the darkness. Now at 35 years old, he commanded one of the finest exploration ships in the human fleet. The Defiance was fast, well-armed, and had the best crew Jake had ever worked with. "Captain, we are getting some strange readings on long-range sensors," said Lieutenant Ben Cross from his station. Ben was young but smart, and Jake trusted his skills completely. The young officer frowned at his screen and checked the readings twice before speaking again. "Sir, these readings show massive ships moving toward our outer colonies. The ships are huge, much bigger than anything we have ever built. They do not match any human designs in our database." Jake felt his stomach drop. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now it seemed they had their answer, and it might not be good news. He walked over to Ben's station and looked at the sensor data himself. The ships were enormous, some of them over 5 kilometers long. They moved in perfect formation, like a military fleet that knew exactly where it was going. Jake counted at least 50 ships in the first wave, with more appearing on sensors every few minutes. "Get me Admiral Lisa Carter on secure channel," Jake ordered. Admiral Carter ran the Terran Defense Command from Earth, and would need to know about this immediately. The screen flickered and Admiral Carter's face appeared. She was a tough woman in her 50s who had spent her entire career in the military. Her gray hair was pulled back strictly and her eyes were sharp and focused. Jake had served under her before and knew she was one of the best military minds humanity had. "Admiral, we have a situation," Jake said, and quickly explained what his sensors had found. Carter listened without interrupting, her face growing more serious with each word. "How long until they reach our colonies?" she asked. "Based on their current speed, the first colony ships will encounter them in about 6 hours. Ben reported from his station. Carter nodded grimly. "Jake, I need you to get to the Proxima colony as fast as your ship can go. Commander Rita Wells is there with a small defense force. She will need all the help she can get." Jake knew Rita Wells by reputation. She was brilliant at tactics and had never lost a battle, but she had never faced anything like this before. No human had. "What about the other colonies?" Jake asked. "I am sending orders to all colony worlds to prepare for evacuation. If these aliens are hostile, we need to get our people to safety," Carter replied. Her voice was calm, but Jake could see the worry in her eyes. As the Defiance raced toward Proxima at maximum speed, our EPORTS started coming in from the outer colonies. The alien ships had arrived at New Austin Colony and were demanding complete surrender. When the colonists tried to negotiate, the aliens attacked without warning. Dr. Alex Kumar called from Earth with disturbing news. He had been studying the alien communications that Earth's intelligence networks had intercepted. The aliens called themselves the Hegemony, and they had conquered over 200 worlds across the galaxy. "Captain, these aliens have a pattern," Dr. Kumar explained over the communication link. "They conquer worlds, take all the resources, and either kill or enslave the native populations. They have been doing this for thousands of years." The news got worse as more reports came in. New Austin Colony had gone silent after just 2 hours of fighting. The aliens had overwhelmed the small defense force there and taken control of the entire planet. Similar reports came from 3 other colonies in quick succession. By the time the Defiance reached Proxima Colony, the alien fleet was already in orbit around the planet. Jake could see the massive ships through his view screen and felt amazed by their size and power. Each ship looked like it could destroy his entire vessel with a single shot. Commander Rita Wells contacted the Defiance as soon as they arrived. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the strain behind her words. Jake, good to see you made it. We have been analyzing their ships, and the situation does not look good. They have weapons we have never seen before and shields that seem almost impossible to break through. What is the plan? Jake S. Rita was quiet for a moment, then spoke with determination. We cannot win a straight fight, so we are going to be creative. The colonists are evacuating to hidden shelters while we prepare a surprise for our visitors. Jake smiled despite the terrible situation. If anyone could find a way to hurt these aliens, it would be Rita Wells. Humanity might be facing its greatest challenge, but they would not go down without a fight. 3 months had passed since the first alien ships appeared in human space. The hegemony had taken 6 colonies, but their advance had slowed dramatically. What should have been easy conquests were turning into costly battles that confused the alien commanders. Captain Jake Morrison crouched behind a damaged wall on the mining world of New Denver. His uniform was torn and dirty from weeks of guerrilla fighting. Around him, 20 human fighters checked their weapons and prepared for another hit-and-run attack on the hegemony supply depot. The aliens had expected to control New Denver within days. Instead, 3 months later, they still fought to hold the main mining facilities while human resistance fighters made their lives miserable. Jake had learned to fight differently than he had been trained. Military academy tactics did not work against an enemy with superior technology and numbers. Remember, we hit fast and run faster, Jake whispered to his team. Do not try to fight them head-on. We want to damage their supplies and disappear before they can respond. The plan worked because it made no sense to the aliens. Hegemony battle computers were designed to predict logical military strategies. Human tactics that seemed random and chaotic confused their systems completely. Engineer Sam Foster had been working day and night in hidden workshops, taking apart captured alien weapons and rebuilding them in ways their creators never intended. His latest creation was a plasma rifle that fired in random patterns instead of straight lines. The aliens could not predict where the shots would go, making their personal shields useless. The beauty is in the chaos, Sam explained to Jake during one of their secret meetings. These aliens think in straight lines. They build everything to be efficient and predictable. We can use that against them. Sam's modifications were spreading throughout the human resistance. Mining lasers became tank-busting weapons. Construction robots turned into explosive-carrying infiltrators. Even farming equipment was being converted into instruments of war. Dr. Alex Kumar had made an important discovery about the hegemony species. Working from his hidden laboratory on Earth, he found that the aliens had been genetically modified over thousands of years. Each species in the hegemony had been changed to serve specific functions. The reptilian Vorthik were leaders and warriors. The insectoid Chethera were workers and builders. Other species filled other roles. This makes them very good at their jobs, but it also makes them predictable. Doctor? Kumar reported to Admiral Carter. Humans are different. We have genetic chaos that lets us adapt to new situations quickly. The aliens cannot understand how we keep changing our tactics. Meanwhile, Commander Rita Wells had built something the aliens had never encountered before. Her underground network used quantum communication devices hidden inside destroyed buildings and abandoned equipment. The aliens thought they had cut off human communications, but Rita's network connected every human settlement across multiple star systems. The network allowed human forces to coordinate attacks across vast distances. When the aliens reinforced one colony, humans would attack somewhere else. The underground network made it possible for scattered resistance groups to work together like a single large army. Admiral Carter had developed what she called the Terran Doctrine based on these early successes. Human forces would avoid direct battles they could not win. Instead, they would attack supply lines, communication centers, and isolated outposts. They would force the aliens to fight on human terms. The doctrine was working better than anyone had hoped. Hegemony forces that had conquered planets in days were now struggling to maintain control after months of occupation. Their casualties were mounting, and their commanders were growing frustrated. The biggest test came when a massive hegemony fleet approached New Kansas, one of humanity's most important agricultural worlds. The planet fed millions of people across human space, and losing it would be a disaster. The colonists of New Kansas were farmers, not soldiers, but they refused to evacuate. Instead, they prepared to defend their world using the only weapons they had available. Farming equipment became their arsenal of resistance. Combine harvesters were fitted with armor plates and heavy weapons. Crop dusters carried explosive payloads instead of fertilizer. Even irrigation systems were converted into defensive networks that could flood areas and create barriers against alien vehicles. When the hegemony forces landed, they expected to face a few scattered defense positions. Instead, they found themselves fighting an entire planet that had turned every farm into a fortress and every farmer into a soldier. The battle for New Kansas lasted 2 weeks. Hegemony commanders sent report after report to their superiors, unable to explain how simple farmers were inflicting serious casualties on professional military units. The humans used tactics that made no sense according to military doctrine, but somehow they worked. Tractors pulling explosive-laden trailers would charge directly at alien tanks, ignoring all defensive fire until the last moment. Farm workers would hide in grain silos and launch surprise attacks with modified hunting rifles. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to ignore the rules of warfare completely. The climax came when the hegemony commander decided to end the battle with an orbital bombardment. As his ships moved into position, thousands of small flying objects rose from the planet's surface. The aliens thought they were seeing birds or insects until the objects started exploding against their ships' hulls. The farmers had converted their crop dusting planes into suicide bombers, piloted by volunteers who were willing to sacrifice their lives to protect their world. The small planes were too numerous and too fast for the big warships to stop them all. Several hegemony vessels were seriously damaged before they could retreat to a safe distance. The hegemony won the battle for New Kansas eventually, but at a cost they had never expected. They had lost more ships and soldiers taking one agricultural world than they usually lost conquering entire star systems. More importantly, they had learned that humans would never surrender as long as they had any means of fighting back. Reports of the New Kansas battle spread throughout the galaxy, carried by the hegemony's own communication networks. For the first time in their history, the Conquerors had met a species that refused to accept defeat. Other conquered worlds began to wonder if resistance might be possible after all. The war was far from over, but humanity had proven something important. They might not have the most advanced technology or the largest armies, but they had something. The hegemony could not understand or counter the refusal to give up, no matter how hopeless the situation appeared. 6 months into the war, Supreme Commander Zethkar of the Vorthek Empire stood in the center of the hegemony Supreme Council chamber. The massive reptilian leader was 8 feet tall with scales that gleamed like black metal under the chamber's lights. Around him, representatives of the 7 hegemony species sat in their assigned positions, all facing toward the center where he stood. Zethkar had conquered 43 worlds personally and overseen the subjugation of more than 100 others. No species had ever given the hegemony as much trouble as these humans. It was embarrassing and costly, and the other species leaders were beginning to question his leadership. The humans continued to resist beyond all logical parameters, reported General Vextoth, the hegemony's chief military strategist. Our computer models predicted complete surrender after we took 30% of their military forces. They have now lost 60% and fight with greater determination than before. How is this possible? Demanded Counselor Yithral of the Crystalline Nethes. Our psychological profiles of conquered species have never been wrong. These humans should have broken months ago. Zethkar had been wondering the same thing. Every species the hegemony had conquered followed predictable patterns. They fought briefly, surrendered when defeat became obvious, and then accepted their new role in the empire. Humans seemed incapable of accepting logical defeat. Captain Jake Morrison was discovering exactly why human unpredictability was so effective. His latest mission had taken him deep into hegemony space to raid a research station where the aliens were studying captured humans. What he found there both amazed and horrified him. The research station contained dozens of human prisoners who were being tested and analyzed by hegemony scientists. The aliens were trying to understand how human minds worked, but their studies only confused them more. Subject exhibits irrational protective behavior toward unrelated individuals, read one report that Jake found. When threatened with pain, subject shows increased aggression rather than submission. This response serves no logical survival purpose. Another report was even more baffling to the alien researchers. Subjects demonstrate willingness to sacrifice personal survival for abstract concepts they call freedom and honor. This behavior pattern has no precedent in our database of conquered species. Dr. Alex Kumar studied the captured research data after Jake's successful raid. What he found confirmed his theories about human uniqueness. The hegemony had never encountered a species that valued individual choice over collective survival. Every species in their empire was bred or evolved for specific social roles, Dr. Kumar explained to Admiral Carter. They think like hive minds, where individual sacrifice for the group is automatic. Humans are different. We choose to fight for others, and that choice makes our sacrifice more powerful. The difference was showing up in battles across human space. Lieutenant Ben Cross had become a resistance leader on the occupied world of New Portland, where he commanded a group of former civilians who had never received military training. His fighters included teachers, shop owners, factory workers, and retired grandparents. According to hegemony military doctrine, such a force should have been helpless against professional soldiers. Instead, Ben's militia had successfully defended the planetary capital for 3 months, using nothing but civilian equipment and impossible courage. We are not fighting because we have to, Ben explained to his fighters during one of their planning meetings. We are fighting because we choose. 2. That makes all the difference. Engineer Sam Foster had been working with captured hegemony scientists who were genuinely puzzled by human engineering methods. The aliens built everything to precise specifications that maximized efficiency. Sam's chaos weapons operated on principles that seemed designed to waste energy and resources. Your weapons should not work, protested Dr. Kethanim, a hegemony researcher who had been captured during a raid. They violate basic engineering principles. The energy patterns are random and unpredictable. That is exactly why they work, Sam replied with a grin. Your shields and defenses are designed to stop logical attacks. Random chaos gets through because your computers cannot predict what will happen next. Sam's latest creation was his masterpiece of controlled chaos. The smart minds he had developed could learn and adapt their behavior based on what they encountered. Each mind was slightly different, and they evolved their tactics as they fought. Hegemony forces never knew what to expect from them, Commander. Rita Wells had expanded her underground network into something the aliens had never seen before. Her operatives were ordinary people who gathered intelligence simply by acting naturally. Shopkeepers, delivery drivers, cleaning staff, and maintenance workers moved freely through hegemony-occupied areas because the aliens did not see them as threats. The network's greatest success came when Rita's operatives discovered that hegemony forces were having serious morale problems. Elite units that had conquered dozens of worlds were requesting transfers rather than fight humans. Some alien soldiers were developing what their medical officers called chaos syndrome, a psychological condition caused by prolonged exposure to unpredictable human tactics. Their soldiers are trained to fight logical enemies, Rita reported to Admiral Carter. When they face opponents who ignore military logic, their training becomes a weakness instead of a strength. The psychological pressure was spreading throughout the hegemony military. For the first time in their history, alien commanders were questioning whether a conquest was worth the cost. Reports from human battlefields described tactics that made no sense but somehow worked. Hegemony soldiers told stories of human fighters who would charge directly at superior forces while screaming words like freedom and liberty. They spoke of humans who would sacrifice themselves to save complete strangers, or who would continue fighting with weapons that should have been useless against alien technology. The most disturbing reports described humans who seemed to fight harder when the situation became more hopeless. Hegemony military doctrine assumed that facing certain defeat would reduce enemy morale. With humans, the opposite appeared to be true. Supreme Commander Zethkar read these reports with growing frustration. The human resistance was not just costing the hegemony ships and soldiers. It was damaging the Empire's reputation for invincibility. Other conquered species were beginning to whisper about the small species that refused to surrender. The climax came during the Battle of New Gettysburg, where a small human force defended a mountain pass against overwhelming odds. Lieutenant Ben Cross led 200 volunteers against 10,000 hegemony troops, knowing that defeat was certain, but fighting anyway to buy time for civilian evacuations. The battle lasted 3 days. When it ended, Ben Cross and his volunteers were dead, but they had achieved their goal. The civilians escaped, and the hegemony forces had suffered casualties that shocked their commanders. More importantly, the story of the last stand spread throughout the galaxy, inspiring resistance movements on a dozen other worlds. For the first time in hegemony history, other species began to believe that the conquerors could be defeated. Humans had shown that courage and determination could overcome superior technology and numbers. The revolution that would reshape the galaxy had begun with one species' refusal to accept the logic of surrender. 1 year after the first hegemony ships appeared in human space, Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the war room deep beneath Earth's surface. The walls were covered with star maps showing the current positions of human and alien forces across 12 star systems. Red markers indicated hegemony-controlled worlds, while blue showed areas still under human control or contested by resistance forces. The situation looked desperate to most observers, but Carter had learned to see patterns that others missed. Human forces had lost more battles than they had won, but each defeat taught them something new about their enemies. More importantly, the hegemony was starting to make mistakes born of frustration and confusion. Operation Wildcard is ready to begin, reported Captain Jake Morrison from his position aboard the new flagship UES Perseverance. The massive vessel was a hybrid of human engineering and captured alien technology, built in hidden shipyards that the hegemony had not yet discovered. Carter had spent months planning this operation. Instead of trying to retake lost worlds directly, human forces would strike at hegemony supply convoys across 8 different star systems simultaneously. Attacks would appear random and unconnected, but they were carefully coordinated to cause maximum disruption. "Remember, unpredictability is our greatest weapon," Carter told the assembled fleet commanders. "Do not follow standard military doctrine. Do whatever the aliens will not expect, even if it seems illogical." Jake Morrison's task force moved toward the Rigel system, where a major hegemony supply convoy was scheduled to pass through an asteroid field. Traditional military thinking would suggest attacking the convoy in open space where human ships could maneuver freely. Instead, Jake planned to use the asteroids themselves as weapons. His engineers had spent weeks preparing the trap. Small fusion. Charges were hidden throughout the asteroid field, connected to a control network that could detonate them in sequence. When the hegemony convoy entered the field, Jake's ships would trigger the charges and turn the entire area into a debris storm. The plan worked perfectly because it was completely insane by normal military standards. Hegemony commanders never considered that an enemy might destroy valuable asteroids just to create temporary weapons. Their battle computers had no programming for dealing with such wasteful tactics. "Detonating charges now," reported Sam Foster from the engineering station. The space around the convoy erupted in a chain of explosions that sent huge chunks of rock flying in all directions. Hegemony shields were designed to stop energy weapons and small projectiles, not building-sized asteroids moving at incredible speeds. 3 alien cruisers were destroyed immediately, while 2 more were damaged too badly to continue fighting. The surviving ships tried to retreat, but Jake's forces had positioned themselves to block the only clear exit from the asteroid field. Dr. Alex Kumar had been working on a new type of weapon specifically designed to exploit hegemony weaknesses. The aliens' genetic modifications made them highly efficient, but efficiency always came with trade-offs. Kumar's bioweapons targeted the very improvements that made each species so specialized. The Vorthek were modified for enhanced strength and aggression, Kumar explained to Admiral Carter. But this also made their nervous systems more sensitive to certain electromagnetic frequencies. The Kithra were given improved coordination for construction work, but their modified brains cannot handle sensory overload. Kumar's weapons did not kill directly. Instead, they temporarily disabled alien forces by overwhelming their enhanced senses or disrupting their modified nervous systems. The weapons were non-lethal, which confused hegemony commanders who expected humans to be as ruthless as they were. Commander Rita Wells' underground network had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. Her operatives now included members of conquered alien species who had been inspired by human resistance to fight for their own freedom. The network had become a truly multi-species organization united by the desire for liberation. The hegemony's greatest weakness is their assumption that conquered species will stay conquered, Rita reported from her hidden command center. They never expected their own subjects to join a rebellion, especially one led by the species they consider primitive. Rita's intelligence network revealed that several hegemony member species were questioning their loyalty to the Empire. The aquatic realm had always been peaceful before their conquest, and they were horrified by hegemony brutality. The crystalline Nephis valued logic above all else, and they were beginning to question whether the Empire's methods were truly logical. Engineer Sam Foster had completed his greatest project, the UES Perseverance, a dreadnought that operated on principles of controlled chaos. The ship's weapon systems could not be predicted by enemy computers because they did not follow any fixed patterns. Every shot was different. Every maneuver was unique. The ship essentially thinks like a human, Sam explained to Jake Morrison during their first combat trial. It analyzes the situation and then does something unexpected, even to us. We have to trust the chaos systems to find solutions we cannot see. The Perseverance proved its worth during the liberation of New Austin Colony, The first world the hegemony had conquered. The battle should have been impossible for human forces to win. The aliens had built massive defensive installations and stationed their most elite troops on the planet. Jake's attack plan seemed like suicide to his own officers. The Perseverance would approach the planet directly, ignoring all tactical doctrine. That said, to attack from multiple angles. The ship would broadcast human music on all frequencies while firing weapons in patterns based on mathematical constants that meant nothing to alien computers. "Sir, this plan violates every principle of space combat," protested one of Jake's lieutenants. "The enemy will destroy us before we reach weapon range." "That is exactly what they expect," Jake replied, "which is why we are going to do something else entirely." The battle for New Austin became legendary throughout human space. The Perseverance danced through enemy fire like it was performing a ballet, its chaos-driven systems finding gaps in the alien defenses that should not have existed. The ship's weapons fired in rhythm with the music it broadcast, creating patterns that hypnotized alien gunners and disrupted their targeting computers. Ground forces, led by Lieutenant Ben Cross's replacement, a former teacher named Carl Wright, landed on the planet while the aliens were still trying to understand what was happening in orbit. The human soldiers used playground equipment from abandoned schools as improvised weapons and children's toys as communication devices. The hegemony garrison on New Austin had conquered 6 worlds before being stationed there. They had never faced an enemy that used hopscotch patterns from military formations or turned jungle gyms into defensive positions. Their training manual had no chapters on fighting opponents who used childhood games as tactical doctrine. The liberation of New Austin sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. For the first time since the hegemony began its conquests, a world had been freed from their control. More importantly, the human attack had been broadcast on frequencies that reached a dozen other star systems. Conquered species across the galaxy watched recordings of human fighters liberating alien civilians and treating enemy prisoners with respect. They saw that the humans fought for principles beyond their own survival, and that they welcomed aliens as allies rather than servants. Supreme Commander Zefkar called an emergency meeting of the hegemony Supreme Council after the loss of New Austin. For the first time in his career, he faced criticism from subordinates who questioned his ability to end the human rebellion. "These humans are spreading chaos throughout our empire," warned General Vex Toth. "Our own member species are beginning to resist our authority. If we cannot defeat one primitive world, how can we maintain control over 200 conquered systems?" Zefkar knew the general was right, but he also knew that conventional tactics would never work against humans. The Empire would need to do something it had never done before: adapt its methods to fight an enemy that refused to follow the rules of warfare. The war was entering its most dangerous phase. Humanity had proven that the hegemony could be defeated, but the aliens still had overwhelming advantages in numbers and technology. The final battle would determine whether the galaxy would be ruled by order or liberated by chaos. 18 months after the war began, the galaxy was changing in ways no one had predicted. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Perseverance, watching liberation fleets from 6 different species converge on the hegemony fortress. World of Iron Gate. What had started as humanity's desperate fight for survival had become a multi-species revolution that threatened to tear the Empire apart. The bridge crew included humans, former hegemony subjects, and even a few defectors from the alien military. Commander Rita Wells worked alongside Dr. Kethnim, the hegemony scientist who had switched sides after witnessing human compassion toward prisoners. Engineer Sam Foster collaborated with Realm Aquatic engineers whose peaceful nature had been twisted by centuries of forced military service. All Liberation fleets report ready for coordinated attack, announced Lieutenant Carl Wright from the communication station. Carl had taken Ben Cross's place after the heroic last stand at New Gettysburg, and he carried the same determination that had made his predecessor legendary. Jake studied the tactical display, showing enemy positions around Iron Gate, the fortress. World controlled supply lines to 12 star systems and served as a major recruitment center where conquered species were processed into hegemony military units. Taking it would cripple alien operations across an entire sector of space. More importantly, Iron Gate held millions of beings from dozens of species who had been enslaved by the hegemony over the centuries. The Liberation Fleet was not just fighting to win territory, they were fighting to free people who had never known anything but servitude. Begin Operation Breaking Chains, Jake ordered, and the most complex military operation in galactic history began. Dr. Alex Kumar had made a discovery that changed everything humans thought they knew about the hegemony. Working with defectors from multiple alien species, he learned that the Empire's conquest pattern had eliminated genetic diversity across hundreds of worlds. Each conquered species had been optimized for specific functions until they lost the ability to adapt or innovate. The hegemony is not just conquering worlds, Kumar reported to Admiral Carter from his research facility on Earth. They are destroying the evolutionary potential of entire species. We might be the last genetically diverse intelligent life in the galaxy. This revelation explained why human unpredictability was so effective against alien forces. The hegemony had spent millennia breeding creativity and chaos out of their subject species. Only humanity still possessed the genetic diversity that produced truly innovative thinking. The knowledge came with a terrible responsibility. If humans were defeated, the galaxy might never produce another species capable of original thought. The war was not just about human survival. It was about preserving the possibility of freedom for all future life. Admiral Carter faced the war's darkest moment when long-range sensors detected the largest hegemony fleet ever assembled moving toward Earth itself. Supreme Commander Zethkar had decided to end the rebellion by destroying its source, and he was bringing enough firepower to crack planets. They have over 300 ships, reported the sensor operator, his voice shaking. Some of them are bigger than anything in our database. Sir, I do not think our defenses can stop them. Carter looked at the approaching fleet and felt the weight of humanity's future on her shoulders. Earth's population was 18 billion people who had nowhere to run. The planet's orbital defenses were strong, but not strong enough to stop what was coming. Send a message to all human colonies and resistance cells, Carter ordered. Tell them that Earth will not surrender, and neither should they. If we fall, the fight continues without us. The defense of Earth became the most desperate battle in human history. Every civilian had been trained in resistance tactics, and they turned the planet's cities into fortresses that would cost the aliens dearly. Children learned to use captured alien weapons, while grandparents prepared explosive surprises in their homes. Engineer Sam Foster's final innovation proved to be humanity's salvation during the siege. Working around the clock in hidden facilities, he had developed self-replicating nanoconstructors that could build weapons, ships, and equipment from raw materials at incredible speed. We call them maker swarms, Sam explained to Jake during a brief pause in the fighting. They can turn asteroids into battleships or garbage into guided missiles. As long as we have raw materials, we can replace our losses faster than the aliens can destroy them. The maker swarms changed the nature of space warfare completely. Human ships that were destroyed in battle could be rebuilt within hours if their maker swarm survived. Weapons that ran out of ammunition could be resupplied from space debris. The hegemony's numerical advantage, began to disappear as human forces multiplied like a virus. Commander Rita Wells coordinated the planet's resistance from a command center hidden deep beneath the ruins of New York. Her underground network had evolved into a planetary defense system that connected every human settlement through quantum communication links that the aliens could not detect or jam. "The beauty of our network is that it has no center," Rita explained to her staff. "They can destroy any part of it, but the rest keeps working. Every human on Earth is a node in the network, and every node can coordinate with every other node." Instantly, the network allowed desperate defensive actions that amazed alien commanders. When hegemony forces landed in one area, humans would instantly coordinate attacks from completely different continents. Civilians in safe zones would provide real-time intelligence to fighters in combat zones. The entire planet fought as a single organism with 18 billion minds working together. The most controversial moment came when Admiral Carter made a decision that shocked both humans and aliens. As hegemony reinforcements approached Earth, she broadcast an offer of alliance to any alien species willing to fight for their own freedom. "This war is not between humans and aliens," Carter announced on frequencies that reached across the galaxy. "This is a war between freedom and slavery, between diversity and conformity. Any being who wants to choose their own destiny is welcome to join us." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Entire fleets of former hegemony ships switched sides, their crews no longer willing to serve an empire that had stolen their freedom. The aquatic realm declared independence from the hegemony and pledged their entire navy to the liberation cause. 3 other species followed within days. Supreme Commander Zethkar watched his empire begin to crumble as species after species chose freedom over security. The humans had done something unprecedented in galactic history. They had inspired other beings to value liberty more than survival. "This is impossible," Zethkar raged at his remaining commanders. "Our member species have served the Empire for thousands of years. They cannot survive without our protection and guidance." But the alien commander was wrong. The subject species had forgotten their own strength during centuries of servitude, but human example reminded them what they could accomplish when they chose to fight for themselves rather than others. The siege of Earth lasted 3 months. But when it ended, humanity had not just survived, they had gained allies from across the galaxy. The hegemony still controlled most of their territory, but their empire was riddled with rebellion and their military was split by defections. The final phase of the war was about to begin, and for the first time since the conflict started, the forces of freedom outnumbered the armies of conquest. The galaxy would never be the same, and that change had started with one species' refusal to accept that freedom was impossible. 2 years after the first hegemony ships appeared in human space, Admiral Jake Morrison commanded the largest liberation fleet in galactic history. The massive armada included ships from 43 different species, all united by their desire for freedom from hegemony rule. The destination was Vorthek Prime, the home world of the reptilian empire that had enslaved half the galaxy. Jake looked around the bridge of the UE's Freedom's Dawn, the newest and most advanced ship in the human fleet. His crew represented 12 different species, each bringing their own skills and knowledge to the fight. The ship itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, combining the best technologies from dozens of worlds. "All fleet commanders report ready for final assault," announced Captain Rita Wells from her position at the tactical station. Rita had been promoted after her underground network became the foundation for the new galactic liberation alliances. Intelligence Service. The approach to Vorthek Prime took the Liberation Fleet through space that had been under hegemony control for over 2,000 years. Dozens of conquered worlds lined their path, each one a testament to the Empire's power and brutality. Many of these worlds had forgotten what freedom looked like, but they were about to remember. Supreme Commander Zethkar waited for them in the Vorthek, home system with the largest military force the hegemony had ever assembled. Over 1,000 ships defended the approaches to his world, supported by orbital fortresses that had been built over centuries. The final battle would determine whether the galaxy belonged to freedom or tyranny. "Sir, the enemy fleet is massive," reported Lieutenant Carl Wright from the sensor station. "They have more ships than our entire alliance combined." Jake smiled grimly as he studied the tactical display. Numbers alone had never determined the outcome of this war, and they would not determine it now. The Liberation Fleet had something more valuable than numerical superiority. They had the chaos factor that had confused hegemony forces from the very beginning. "Signal all ships to implement Morrison Doctrine," Jake ordered. "Every captain has complete freedom to engage as they see fit. No formations, no coordinated movements, no predictable patterns." The Morrison Doctrine was the ultimate expression of human military philosophy. Instead of trying to control the battle, Jake was releasing thousands of individual commanders to fight as their instincts and training guided them. The result would be complete chaos that no computer or strategic mind could predict or counter. Dr. Alex Kumar watched the battle begin from his position aboard the science vessel UES Discovery. His job was to coordinate the use of specialized weapons designed to exploit hegemony weaknesses, but he also served as the Alliance's chief negotiator for enemy forces that wanted to surrender. "Dr. Kumar, we are receiving surrender signals from 6 hegemony vessels," reported his communications officer. "They want to know what terms the Alliance offers." Kumar smiled as he prepared his response. The Liberation Alliance offered something the hegemony had never provided to defeated enemies: genuine choice about their future. Surrendering ships could join the Alliance, return to their homeworlds, or simply leave the war zone entirely. This policy had proven incredibly effective during the 2-year campaign. Thousands of hegemony personnel had switched sides when they learned they would be treated with respect rather than enslaved or executed. Many alien commanders found human concepts of honor and mercy more appealing than Vorthik concepts of domination. And fear. Engineer Sam Foster had spent months preparing for this final battle by creating the most chaotic weapons in galactic history. His latest creations were smart missiles that could not only adapt their attack patterns, but could also communicate with each other to develop new tactics in real time. "Each missile learns from the others," Sam explained to Jake during their final preparations. "They share information about enemy defenses and develop countermeasures collectively. The more we fire, the smarter they become." The missiles proved their worth immediately when the Liberation Fleet engaged hegemony forces around the outer planets of the Vorthek system. Traditional alien point defense systems were overwhelmed by weapons that constantly changed their approach patterns based on collective learning. Commander Rita Wells coordinated intelligence gathering from across the battle zone through her expanded network. Alliance ships shared sensor data instantly, creating a real-time picture of the entire engagement that was available to every captain simultaneously. "The hegemony is trying to use their standard defensive formations," Rita reported, "but our ships are not following any attack pattern they can recognize. Their computer models are predicting complete fleet destruction within 6 hours. The computer predictions were wrong because they assumed logical military behavior from the Liberation forces. Human captains ignored tactical doctrine when their instincts suggested better alternatives. Alien commanders who had recently joined the Alliance brought combat techniques that had been suppressed for centuries under hegemony rule. The battle reached its climax when Jake led a small strike force directly toward Vorthek Prime while the main fleet engaged defensive forces throughout the system. His target was not military installations or government buildings, but the planet's communication centers that broadcast hegemony propaganda across the galaxy. "Sir, this mission seems almost suicidal," observed Lieutenant Wright as their ship raced through intense defensive fire. "Why risk so much for communication facilities?" Jake's answer revealed the true genius of human strategy. "Because we are not here to conquer the Vorthik. We are here to give them the chance to free themselves." The strike force reached the planet's surface and successfully captured the main broadcast facility. Instead of destroying it, Jake's team used it to transmit messages throughout the galaxy from species that had been liberated from hegemony rule. For the first time in 2 millennia, conquered worlds heard voices speaking of freedom and self-determination. The effect was immediate and devastating too. Hegemony morale. Rebellions erupted on dozens of worlds as populations realized that resistance was possible. Many hegemony military units simply abandoned their posts rather than fight their own people. Supreme Commander Zethkar found himself fighting a war on hundreds of fronts simultaneously as his empire collapsed around him. Species that had served the hegemony for generations suddenly remembered their own cultures and traditions that had been suppressed for centuries. "This is impossible," Zethkar transmitted to Jake during a brief pause in the fighting. "Order cannot be defeated by chaos. Efficiency cannot be overcome by randomness." Jake's response became one of the most quoted statements in galactic history. "You are right that order usually defeats chaos. But you forgot something important. We are not chaos. We are organized chaos, and that makes all the difference." The final surrender came not through military defeat but through political collapse. When the crystalline Nethys declared independence and withdrew their ships from the hegemony fleet, other species quickly followed. Within hours, Zethkar commanded only Vorthek vessels, and many of those crews were questioning orders. Dr. Kumar's greatest moment came when he negotiated directly with Zethkar for the peaceful transition of power. The Vorthik commander expected to be executed or enslaved like conquered enemies throughout hegemony history. Instead, Kumar offered him something unprecedented: the chance to lead his own people toward a better future. "The Liberation Alliance does not seek revenge," Kumar explained. "We seek justice, and justice means giving everyone the opportunity to choose their own path." The war officially ended when representatives from over 200 worlds gathered on the neutral planet of Haven to sign the Galactic Freedom Charter. The document established the basic principles that would govern relations between species: voluntary cooperation, mutual respect, and the right of all beings to determine their own destiny. Admiral Carter spoke for humanity at the ceremony, but her words applied to all species that had fought for liberation. "We did not fight this war to build an empire of our own. We fought to ensure that no empire could ever again steal the freedom that belongs to every thinking being in the galaxy." The years that followed became known as the Golden Age of galactic civilization. Trade and cultural exchange flourished between worlds that had been isolated by hegemony restrictions. Scientific discoveries accelerated as researchers from different species shared knowledge freely. Jake Morrison retired from military service and became an explorer again, leading expeditions to map regions of space that had been forbidden under hegemony rule. He discovered 17 new intelligent species that had hidden from the Empire for centuries, all of them eager to join the galactic community as free peoples. 10 years after the war ended, humanity had become known throughout the galaxy not as conquerors but as liberators. Human diplomats helped resolve conflicts between species. Human engineers shared their chaos-based technologies freely, and human teachers spread the concepts of individual liberty and creative thinking. The greatest monument to the war was not built of stone or metal, but lived in the hearts and minds of billions of beings who had learned that freedom was worth any sacrifice.